Irene Namuano, a banker who, through a change of heart, owned up to corrupt practices where she worked and had to go to prison for 3 years.
And one day, I went to a Pentecostal church. During the prayers, somebody said that there is a lady among us who has a problem with her breast, the left-hand side breast, and that was me. And I said, wow, this God knows me, before I say anything, That was my first time to go to the church. But while I was there, it was like my biggest problem was addressed. And so my life turned around. I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. And during that time, I had taken a lot of money from the bank because I was the chief cashier. I would help myself with bank money. And it was like somehow I found a way of covering it, on the computer and accounts. Couldn't discover it for over many years. And at that particular time, the auditors had just finished auditing the books, and the accounts were in the papers, they are okay. But I knew that the God who had seen this before I speak knew what I was doing and covering up, much as these auditors had not, discovered it. So somehow it is like I wanted to have my relationship with God straightened out because he had addressed an issue that was going to take away my life. So I felt I would rather have this relationship than the money or the job or whatever. So what I did, I started paying up the money that I had stolen. And somehow I got to a point when I got stuck because most of the ways that I was using to get money, I had stopped them because some of them were not straight. I had to inform the people who were concerned, especially the chief accountant and the general manager of the bank. So one day I make up my mind and go to the bank and told them this is what has happened, and I updated the books to the right picture. I updated the figures because they looked at the figures and the cash and they were not balancing by some over 10 million. So after that, they took up the case to the police. They took it to court and they sentenced me to 3 years imprisonment, and I went to jail. And while I was there, of course, there are many things that happened. My body suffered, but my spiritual life prospered. And one thing which I want to say is that is the connection I had with God, okay? And I got the correction in my life, and then I got the direction in ministry. So right now, I am actively involved in prisons ministry. I organize medical doctors. We put our money together at the end of the month. We get money from our salaries, put it together, and go and treat those who are sick. We visit children who have been left behind by these prisoners. Many of them are not visited after being imprisoned, especially those who are sentenced to death. So we go visit their children. We bring them over where it is possible because, of course, transport sometimes is quite difficult, but we bring them over to visit their parents and we take them back. We help them with things like clothing and scholastic materials. Then, when I met initiatives of change, we embraced another new aspect in this area of prison ministry, and that is reconciliation, okay? Making peace, and change in their lives on behalf of these prisoners and the people they offended. So we want to connect them and see whether we can negotiate peace between them and the people they offended before they come back to the community.
And the government of the day wanted me, and they gave me the appointment to go to the national level to now chair the tribunal. I went into the system. I lasted 30 days as a chairman of a tribunal because I discovered they were more corrupt than the judiciary that they were attacking. They were bargaining. If you wanted 20 years, you refused to give me bribe. I will give you. If you want 10 years, please give me something substantial. If you wanted no sentence and a fine, it depended on the amount. 30 days, I reported to the authorities. and left the system. Actually, they investigated, and about 5 lawyers were arrested, including the tribunal chairman. They were tried and imprisoned. I went into my private practice. Until 92, I joined politics. I'm now being attacked for not building houses by the community. The people who elect me, they are asking me questions. You've been in parliament 14 good years, leader of opposition. You are not building house. Why? But I thought, and I keep on saying, that I prefer investing in people than investing in property. That's where I get satisfaction. And that is what I continue to do.
One of the highlights of the conference was a co-lecture given by Ibrahima Fall, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for the Great Lakes region of Central Africa. He gave a detailed overview of the situation that exists in the region and the modalities that the international community has to put in place to work towards a better future. He said that regional leaders were now determined to lead the region to peace. He also thought it necessary for multinational companies to become parties to agreements. While charity begins at home, Africa does not exist in isolation and therefore need the support of the international community. What help is Africa asking the rest of the world?
What is Africa wanting from the outside world? What does it seek? Many of you may not be aware, but I find it very reassuring that over the last 7 years, the continent has played a huge emphasis on the idea of a new relationship with the outside world. The continent wishes to break with a paternalistic relationship of donor-recipient between Africa and the outside world. I will be the first to say to you that the challenge of partnership between two unequals is of course a huge challenge. But it is possible to come up with a paradigm of partnership. The continent has put on the agenda this idea of a strategic partnership between itself and the outside world. Now we know in any partnership, there's supposed to be mutual responsibilities and mutual accountability between two sides. The African Union and its continental program, the New Partnership for Africa's Development, takes this idea of mutual responsibility and mutual accountability between itself and the outside world very seriously. And let me just spell out some of the elements of this new partnership. First, the two sides will have commitments. Africa, first of all, commits to take governance, good governance, and democratization very seriously. The continent takes seriously the idea of creating an environment for economic growth. The continent undertakes to put in place mechanisms to root out corruption, of course a terrible problem in Africa. We have a very innovative idea in the continent, this idea of an African peer review mechanism where African governments and civil society monitor progress towards good governance and democracy. So the continent certainly said that it is willing to play its part in mutual accountability. Not in the least the idea of making our own peace, taking the major responsibility for taking peace. But surely the outside world must have responsibilities. And there are clear responsibilities. I don't think the question is whether Africa continues to need aid. Surely the international community has, since the 1970s, made a commitment to give on an annual basis 0.7% of their GDPs towards aid. The question therefore is not whether Africa needs aid. The question is what that aid is supposed to do. And I want to put it plainly that we need aid to build our capacities to take care of our own destiny and our own future, to strengthen our institutions, our continental institutions, our sub-regional institutions in Africa.
Saying that let's invest in prevention, but let us also try to understand the underlying causes of the war. Sometimes we mean very, very well. As members of international community, go in, but without understanding the situation, sometimes you do cause more problems than do good.